All right. How's everybody doing today? Doing good? Okay. Well, all right. A couple things. First, I passed out the homework yesterday just before you guys took off. We said that was going to be due tomorrow. I'm going to go ahead and make one change. Okay, kind of a little change, but not too bad. I sat down yesterday after school and I started creating a key for that homework, and I got to looking at the problems and I was like, wow, I really don't like these problems at all. I don't think they're going to be beneficial to you in the long run. So that homework I gave you yesterday, we're just going to go ahead and discard it. Or if you want to keep it as extra problems to look at, perfectly fine. The one you picked up today that looks like this. These are much better problems. They're more involved. They're progressive. These are going to help get you ready and more prepared than that other one. Okay, so this is the one that we're now going to be looking at. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and change a couple of dates because I decided to do that. Originally, tomorrow is when the homework was going to be due. We're going to move that to Thursday. I still want to give you the same amount of time. Okay, I mean, who's not going to run home and just do the math anyway, right? A lot of people laughing. Okay. Now, we said the quiz was going to be when? On Thursday. On Thursday, because I'm going to go ahead and move the homework assignment, I'm going to move the quiz as well. We're going to have that on Friday. That way, we can talk about the homework and get it turned in Thursday, again, prior to the quiz. That was my goal all along. So we're going to push those ahead just a little bit. Now, probably early next week, we're going to have a little, I don't know if I'm going to have it as a quiz yet, or maybe some kind of in-class assignment over cumulative frequency. That is the next lesson, the next set of notes that you just picked up. If we were able to make it to that today, great. If not, it'll be tomorrow. I just thought I'd go ahead and get those out there. But the test will still be next week. The test is still going to be next Thursday. Okay, so everything we'll have talked about, starting since yesterday is fair game. So is everybody okay on the homework now? Okay, that one you got yesterday, just put it to the side. This one right here with all these really cool problems. Okay, so let's see. We were talking about frequency tables yesterday, and we were answering questions on this previous one. We got up, finished this particular problem, but frequency is simply the number of times that a particular element is going to appear in a set of data. Okay, and typically you're given these frequency tables and you can generate the sequence from it if you would prefer to do so. Or a lot of times you might be given the set of data like this next question and you're asked to go ahead and create a frequency table to represent it. Now you'll notice, I don't want to go ahead and pull this down, but this one's already broken into class intervals for you. Okay, you'll notice the first class interval goes from 148 to 150 and so on and so forth. I'm not too concerned with the tally column, but I would like to know the frequency of elements that appears in those intervals created for you. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and let you try to fill in this table by yourself. Give you a couple minutes to do so. While you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and pass back your papers from yesterday. Okay, oh, good. Was there missing something? What's up? Oh, that too indicated to me as the second lesson. Oh yeah, you're fine. You're good. Okay. All right, so let me go ahead and pass back your papers. And then when I'm done, we'll go ahead and start taking a look at this. Okay. Amy. There you go. Okay. Elizabeth. Okay. Jaylee. Mariah. Okay. Signa. Okay. Ella. Okay. Amy. Okay. Then we got Jacob. Emma. Oh, sorry. Reese. There you go. John Henry. There you go, sir. Okay. Lucas. There you go, sir. There we go. Joey. Jane. Then we have Lizzie. Okay. Nolan. There you go, sir. Bradley. Gabriella. Okay. Cortland. Okay. Let's see. Ethan Maples. Where are we? Naya. Monty. Madeline. Ethan. Oh, If you weren't able to check the website, I should have right over there in the corner by the pencil sharpener. If you'll look at Monday's folder, we should have those notes in there. Okay. You can. I've already got it copied and ready to go. If you just want to take it when you get back, fine with that. Okay. Erica. Sarah Beth. Laura. Matthew. And Stephanie. All right. So how many elements are in the set total? Okay, so 36. All right, we've got several intervals. I believe they are 3 units apart. Now this is probably, it's going to take a little bit of time sorting through the data, and then you always want to double check yourself to make sure that you have the correct frequency values. But let's see if everybody's on the right track. For the first one here, I found 3 elements between 148 and 150. Okay, good to go. Now, what was the relative frequency? Yeah, that represented the percentage of those particular elements in your set. So for example, there was only 3 elements out of the 36, so 3 out of 36 is where I got the 1/12. And then if you wanted to convert that, to a decimal and then to a percentage, multiply by 100, okay? I think I just left these all as fractions. What about the next interval? Anybody have the total frequency? I got 8. Okay. 8 values between 151 and 153. Okay. Are we good enough to keep going, or should I wait a little bit longer? Lucas, you're good? Okay. All right. So, Lucas, what do you have for the next interval? Oh, we don't actually have it? Okay. Who does have the next one? Okay. Ethan, what do you think? 7. That's exactly what I got. Okay. Next up. I got 4. I got 4 on that one. Okay. Only 4 values between 157 and 159. Then what about the next interval? I got 6. And then, I haven't gotten that far yet. Oh, I heard someone say it. 2, 1, 2, 3. There we go. And then if you add up the values for that frequency column, it should always give you the grand total of all the elements in your set. Okay. So you may not have finished that in the time allotted, and that's perfectly fine. We're getting a little bit of practice. Okay, you'll definitely get some on that homework, which again is way better than the one I had for you yesterday. But Ella was asking a question yesterday when we were trying to distinguish between numerical values being either discrete or continuous. You remember we said discrete, you were allowed a portion of a value? Okay, what was discrete? Continuous, I allowed a portion of a value. Discrete was, just your counting numbers. Okay, it's got to be whole items. Well, she was asking a question the other day or yesterday, is it possible for values to be both discrete and continuous? And I did say yes. I didn't go ahead and elaborate on it because I didn't have a good example. I was kind of waiting for this. But you'll notice if you look at all these elements, all 36 of these, okay, the data itself is discrete. Okay, there's no decimal values, right? But as soon as I go ahead and take that data and I've organized it by class intervals, it's now become what? It's now become continuous because these intervals are connected. Okay, so this first one goes 148 to 150. There are no decimals. The next one starts at 151. And it just continues in that pattern all the way to 174. So in a moment, when we go ahead and graph this, we're not going to be looking at a bar graph. The class intervals made it continuous, so that's where our histogram is going to come from. Okay. Remember, a bar graph, you're going to have all the bars, but they're going to be separated because the data is discrete. But if they are pushed together without any space between them, that's the histogram. Okay, so any questions on this right here? Okay, well, let's go ahead and create that table. All right, make a column or a bar graph to display the classes of heights. So we're looking for the histogram. Okay, so I've already got these heights along the bottom. I already took the time to go ahead and get the frequency up here. So I'm going to kind of go back and forth, and you guys can help me. For the first interval, 148 to 150, we had how many values? 3. Okay, so I'm going to go up here to 3, and then I'm going to come right down at 151, because this is where the next interval is going to begin. Okay, and I'm just going to make a bar for each interval using the frequency. What was the next one? It was 8. Okay, so this one's the highest. So for this next interval, I'm going to go all the way up to 8. There we go. And then let me go ahead and get my paper so I don't have to keep going back and forth. That's going to get old. All right. So let's see. What was the next one? I got 7. Okay, so for this next interval, I got 7. And this isn't going to look amazing, but, you know, it's going to be okay. The next one, I got 4. Okay, then we got 6. Okay, then we got 2, 1, 2, and 3. So 2, 1, 2, and then we have 3. I think I went a little high on that one. There we go. So there's my histogram. Okay, remember that is descriptive. I haven't analyzed or done anything with the data yet. I simply took the set and I went ahead and put it in a visual, okay, a histogram. Okay, questions on that? Easy? Okay. All right, now, would you like to try one on your own? This next one's a little smaller, shouldn't take as much time. Okay. This one, we're talking about some lobsters. So a sample of 20 juvenile lobsters was randomly selected from a tank containing several hundred. The length of each lobster was measured in centimeters, and the results were here. Okay, so you'll notice they've already set up your frequency table in class intervals. Okay, now you'll notice we do end and begin with the same value, but at the end of the interval, we don't include it, but we do include it at the minimum of the next one. So any value is going to be found in a specific interval. Okay, so I want you to do now what you were just doing a moment ago. How many lobsters were taken? Okay, so 20. So what I want you to do is find the frequency of all the heights. Okay, what are we talking about here? Is it the heights? The length, I'm sorry, so the length of each of the data sets that's going to fall into these class intervals. Okay. And again, I'm not too worried about the tally column. I've never seen that appear on one of the paper exams. If you want me to go ahead and fill it in, I will, but let me give you about a minute or two to take a look at that. Okay. And once you get the table done, if you're feeling really confident, go ahead and use that information to create another histogram, just like we did a moment ago. Okay. Now you're going to notice I've got some information over here to the right. Okay, just ignore that for right now. I'm going to come back and do something else with this problem that it's not asking us to. We're a little off on those. Anybody got your frequency values and want me to double check? The first two are a little off. The last three are perfect. 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 Oh, wait. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, that's perfect. Okay, the first and the third are a little off. Perfect. Good, Laura. Perfect. Okay, continue. Perfect. Dan, you ready? Okay, now we don't need the relative frequency. We don't want to divide by the 20. We can put that column on there if we want. Right now, we just want to know the number of elements that appear in each of those intervals. Okay. Bundles. Okay. All right, looks like a lot of people are doing really well. All right, so you may or may not be done, and that's okay. Let's go ahead and run through. How many elements appear in the interval between 3 and 4? There are 3. Okay, 3. Between 4 and 5. 6. Next. 5. 2. And if you add all those up, it gives me 20. The sum of the frequency column should always give you the number of items or elements you have in your set. Anybody worried about the tally? Anybody want me to do that? Huh? Okay. So let's see what we got here. We're going to go ahead and use these upper and lower values on the intervals horizontally. That's the length in centimeters of these lobsters. So I'm going to say 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so this is the length in centimeters. And then we have the frequency that we're going to go ahead and graph that against. So the highest one is 6, so these tick marks are going to be just fine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Now, because it's in class intervals, that makes it continuous, even though the data originally started as discrete. Again, the same idea we were talking about yesterday, but we're going to create a histogram. So this first bar between 3 and 4 should only go up to 3. Okay. And then we just continue creating the graph. Between 4 and 5, we're going to go up to 6. Then we have 5, so I'm going to drop just a little bit on that. Then we want to go between 6 and 7, where we're going to have 4. And then we're going to finish up with 2. So let's see if I can, maybe like right there. Okay. And there we go. There is my frequency histogram. Okay, questions? Now, the one thing I always want to do is show you how to do things by hand, because again, I think it's going to be important in the long run, but I also want to spend time on the calculator. I want to show you how to be able to do the same thing here. So what we're going to have to do, even though we see exactly what the set of data is, let's say I wanted to reproduce this in the calculator. So we're going to pretend we don't see the data anymore. Okay. All I know is that we have 3 links between 3 and 4 centimeters. Okay, could be 3.9, could be 3.8. Again, we're going to pretend we don't know. Is everybody okay? Let's take this information and let's go ahead and put it in the calculator. Now, if you're going to go ahead and do that and your data has been divided by class intervals, you have to use the midpoint. Okay, we're going to use the midpoints of the intervals. Okay, so how far is it halfway between 3 and 4? 3.5. Okay, so I'm going to say 3.5, and then you're going to see patterns here, 4.5, 5.5, 6.5, and then we're going to have 7.5, right? Okay, so if you'll notice, right below this on your paper, it does give you instructions, but this is on the old TI-84. Okay, so this resource is a little old. Okay, I want to go ahead and show you how to do this on the Inspire. So you'll probably want to go ahead and make little notes over to the side, exactly how I'm going to do this in the calculator. Okay, so let's do that. Let's go to the calculator. Okay. Now the first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is choose number 1. Okay, we want a new document. Okay, specifically lists and spreadsheets. Okay, so from your home page, you're going to click number 1, or you can even use the icon down below. Okay, lists and spreadsheet, and it's going to take you to this Excel spreadsheet in your calculator. Okay, the one thing I absolutely don't want to touch is this row here with the equals by it. Has anybody ever had any experience with Excel spreadsheets? Okay, a little bit. Well, have you ever typed in a formula? You know, you got to type equals, and then you go ahead and type in the cells that you want to manipulate. If you want to put in any formulas, this is the row you're going to look at. So for everything that we are going to do, we are absolutely going to avoid that row. We are never going to put anything in the row. Okay. Now the first column, I always just go ahead and call it X. Okay. But if you want to go ahead and call it, you know, lengths or centimeters, whatever works best for you. Okay. Now you always want to make sure to push enter or arrow out of the cell. Now right next to it, we're going to go ahead and use the frequency. So this time I'm actually going to go ahead and type in FREQ, or again, if you just want to put Y, and you'll just remember what they represent. Okay. So I'm going to have 2 columns here, just like I do in my table. The first column is going to be the midpoints. Second column is going to be the frequency. So I believe the first one was 3.5, correct? So I'm going to type 3.5, enter. And I'm going to go all the way down. 7.5. Now, we're not too far away. I mean, you could just, bless you, go ahead and arrow back up. But there's a little trick, especially if you're using a large set of data and you want to get back to the top very quickly. If you go ahead and click Control 7, no matter how far down you are, it'll automatically take you to your very first data entry. Okay. Oh, if you push Control Enter, it'll immediately take you back to the top. You don't have to scroll. Okay. Everybody with me so far? Everybody's got the first column? Okay. Now what I'm going to do right next to it, I'm going to put in the corresponding frequencies. Okay. Remember, we're using the midpoints here because it was class intervals. So the first frequency was, what was it, 3, then 6, okay, and then we're going to go 5, 4, 2. So 5, 4, 2, okay, and always arrow out. Okay, everybody with me so far? That's the first step right there. Before you can do any kind of analysis or strategy, you got to get the data in the calculator correctly. I think it's always worth a few seconds just to make sure you know it's correct. All right, so what you're going to do now, okay, once you got your data in, click your home button. We're going to go back home. You've got your data in, so now I want to tell the calculator what to do with it. So I'm going to come down here to this icon, the one that looks like, what did we just create? A histogram. This guy right here. Now, of course, mine is color, but you're going to want the one right to the next of that. Now, as soon as I click it, this is the one and only time our calculators will not look the same. Basically, it's going to take those ordered pairs as soon as I click it, and it's just going to throw them on the screen. It's going to go bleh. Okay. So what we have to do is make sure it knows what the horizontal and the vertical is going to be. So if you'll come over here, once you've clicked that data and statistics, come over here and click tab. Does anything look familiar? Those are the 2 headings that I chose when I first put the data in. You always choose the first column X first. So I'm going to make sure to choose X, click enter. See, it's going to line them up horizontally. Okay. And now I'm going to hit tab again. What do you think I'm going to do? Frequency. So I'm going to click enter, and there we go. Okay. Now, does that somewhat look familiar? If I were to come back over here to my graph, Jacob, I just heard you go, is that mind blown? Nice. What we did was we just graphed the midpoints against the frequency. So all we see right now are those dots. But we do want to see the histogram, right? Okay. So is everybody okay up to this point? All right. Well, here's what we do now. Once you've plotted those points, okay, and you see the same pattern right here on your calculator screen, okay, you're going to go back to your spreadsheet page. Now you can either, use your mouse to click this, or you can actually hit Control and left, and you can move between your documents. Okay. But all we need to do is get back to the data. We need an empty cell. You need to be in an empty cell when you do this. And it does not matter if you choose the one at the very bottom, as long as it doesn't have anything in it. Okay? Once you're on an empty cell, now you're going to click Menu. Okay? Then I'm going to go to Data. And then I'm going to go all the way down to Summary Plot. Okay, so I went back to the spreadsheet, chose an empty cell. I clicked Menu. What was first? Data. Now I'm going to go all the way down to Summary Plot. Okay. Now, you probably going to have to make a few changes here because the X list and the summary list, those are the two columns of information that you just put in. So you'll notice the X list, it's labeled as what? Frequency. So you want to go ahead and make sure to click it and choose the correct title so it knows what data to use. Okay. Now, in the second column, I did title that frequency, so I don't have to do anything there. Okay. Now, this is your personal preference. Usually on the Inspire, I've gotten accustomed to doing a split screen. But if you go ahead and click this, you can actually create a new page, or you can just split your Excel can't talk today, spreadsheet in two with the graph you're about to create. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it as a split page. Click OK. Boom. Okay. Now that's a bar graph of discrete data, right? We're getting closer. We want a what? We want a histogram. So we need to go ahead and tell the calculator what the parameters of the data is going to be. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to, once you see the split screen, we're going to go to Menu. Okay. We want to go to Plot Properties. Okay. And you'll notice, what's the very top one? Histogram Properties. We want to go to Bin Settings. Okay. Okay. Now, let me go back here. Let me escape out of this. Okay. So once you see your split screen, we're going to Menu. Where do I go? Plot Properties. Histogram Properties. Bin Settings. And now I want equal bin width. All of my class intervals are exactly 1 unit wide. Okay. So I'm going to click that. Now, what's the width of each interval? Well, it's 1 unit. And, depending on your data, maybe you'll go ahead and make your intervals larger, smaller, whatever the case is. Now, when it says alignment, that means go ahead and put the smallest value associated with all of your class intervals. So what is the smallest length we're starting our table with? 3. Because remember, the first interval goes from 3 to 4, right? So I'm going to go ahead, tab, put in 3, and now I'm going to click OK. Boom. There's my histogram. Okay. All right. Questions? Yes, ma'am. On the calculator, some of them are yes, that's true. So there are certain ones that you don't need. Now, are you talking about a command you needed was X'd out?
Yeah.
Data. Let's see, escape here, escape. Oh, okay, because what we need to do is go home, and now we need to graph it. Mm-hmm. You hadn't got it graphed yet, so summary plot's not an option yet. Okay. So you'll go tab, X is always first, tab, frequency, and there we go. Now you'll go back. Let's not let me go back here. I'll just use the mouse. Now let's see, menu, data. Come on, data. That's interesting. I don't know. I'll have to look at that. I'm not sure why that is. Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, yes. Not just yet. We're almost done. Okay. All right, so there we go. It's one of those things that this is probably going to be more useful to you in terms of the IA. I've never seen anything of this content knowledge showing up on the paper exams. like them asking you to go ahead and create one on the calculator because that's, not gradable. You're going to be writing and turning in everything that you have. But if you're looking to create a histogram or even a bar graph based on your data, now we have an idea to do that. And really, when it comes to it, sometimes the best way, to learn technology is to what? Yeah, just kind of use it. Just kind of play with it. Take different sets of data and see what you're allowed to do. Okay. Now remember, if you forgot anything that I just went through, why is that okay? Well, probably at one point, but I'm recording it. Yeah, it's on the website. I'm recording it. You can just, go back and kind of review yourself on those. John Henry. Oh, it's just because of the format. It's supposed to be one like it, yeah. Yeah, we're not saying that one is different than the others. It's just the way the computer created it, or calculator. It really is a computer. Okay, now what I'm going to ask you to do, when you're done with a document, go ahead and hit Control and W. This will allow you to erase. Do you want to save these? No. Okay, and then everything that you just input will be wiped clean. Okay. Always try to remember to hit Control W, because occasionally, students tend to forget, and I've seen where certain calculators have had 25, 30 plus documents open at once, and then the calculator becomes so full, it will not allow you to do any more, but it won't even allow you to go ahead and delete the existing documents. So I've got to restart the entire calculator. It's not a problem, just get in the habit, if you could, of going and erasing those. Okay, question. Super fun, right? Yeah. Okay, well, there's something else I want to go ahead and do with this particular problem. Because if you go ahead and take a look at, number one on the homework I gave you, the new homework, this question is already coming up. And it actually shows up quite a bit in IB. Yes, ma'am? Aha, that's what I'm going to talk about. Yes. Okay, so Stephanie recognized what I did over here. How many lobsters did I choose? I chose 20, correct? So if I take all 20 of these links, if I add them up, I'm going to go ahead and get 104.4. And you can test that in the calculator if you don't trust me. Okay. But I did it yesterday. All right. Now, when you find in the average, you're going to take the sum total of all of your elements, and then you're going to divide by the total number, right? So that's why I divided by 20. Okay. That's where I got 5.22. Everybody understand what I mean? Everybody understand what I mean? Mean is average. Okay. Anyways, so I wanted to go ahead and show you something. Now, you remember a second ago I said, forget about the fact that we actually know the numbers in the data. Pretend again that we don't have these. Let's say that this table was all that I was given. Okay. But based on this information, I want to go ahead and try to calculate the mean or the average as best I can. Okay. Well, if you're going to go ahead and create the histogram in the calculator, you're going to use the midpoint of these intervals. If you're asked to go ahead and find the average, you're going to use the midpoint as well. But you don't want to forget about the frequency. Okay, so let me show you what we're going to do, because once we find it this way, I want you to see how close to the real average it's going to come out to be. All right. Well, what was the midpoint between 3 and 4? We said that was 3.5, right? Well, the midpoint of each interval, you want to go ahead and multiply that value by the frequency for that interval. Okay. So somebody help me out. What is 3.5 times 3? Yes, I think I got 10.5. So I'm going to go ahead and put 10.5. Because here's the idea. If we actually don't know what the numbers are between 3 and 4, for all we know, it could be 3. It could be 3.1. Maybe it's 3.9. So see, if it's a span, if it's an interval, the best strategy is to use the midpoint. Okay, exactly halfway between where all the values, bless you, could be. All right. And now let's continue to do this down the road. 4.5 is the midpoint of the next interval times the frequency 6. What do I get? I got 20. I got 27. Okay, let's make sure. 5.5 times 5? 27.5. Okay, 5 right there. 6.5 times 4? That's a 26. And 7.5 times 2. Okay, that's a 15. Okay, now I want to add all those up. So somebody help me out. Okay, because remember, think about it. The frequency tells you what? It tells you the number of times that an element appears in a set, right? So if I don't know what the elements in a class interval are, I'm just going to say, okay, it's got to be the midpoint. So for example, if I were to recreate this, I'm saying 3.5 would show up 3 times. And then I'm saying 4.5 would show up how many times? There you go. And then I could recreate the data set out of nothing but midpoints. Is everybody okay? Well, somebody help me out. What'd you get? I got 106. Now, that's the grand total of all the elements that I'm saying is in the data based on the midpoints. So in order to find the average, what am I going to divide 106 by? By the total number, we had 20, didn't we? Okay, so I'm going to come back over here, calculate 106 divided by 20. Of course it did. Control divide, 5.3. Really close. Okay, so even though you don't know what the elements are themselves, by finding the midpoint of the class interval, you can still get a really good idea of what that average is. Does that make sense for everybody? Okay. Questions?
How would you do this if there wasn't a range of length?
What do you mean? Oh, like if you were just given the data? You can actually decide if you think it's better to go ahead and group your data by class intervals. It depends on what you want to do with it. I will go ahead and say that the smaller your class intervals are, the more approximate your analysis should be. The better it would be. So you definitely don't want huge intervals like from 10 to 50. Okay, you want to narrow that down a little bit. Okay, and really, I mean, I'm sorry, for that, there's really no set answer. It really depends on a case-by-case basis. Like, what do you think is going to be best to analyze your data? I mean, like, why does a bald man buy shampoo? Nobody said it. Nobody was going to say, but Mr. West, you're not bald. Wow! Okay. Wow. It made me sad, too. But I don't like to think of myself as bald. I'm follically challenged. Okay. Everybody okay with that? We're good? We're good? Okay. Now, we're almost done. Remember, those were the 84 instructions. Not going to worry about that. Okay. Last item of this lesson, and then we're done. So we should be able to finish this up pretty quick tomorrow, get into cumulative frequency. Remember, the new homework isn't due until what? Thursday. The quiz is now on Friday. So I've not had the opportunity to change it on the website yet, so that information is not correct. I will be changing that. Let's talk about box and whisker plots. Okay, what's a box and whisker plot? It's like the thing with the things. I love your explanation. Okay, so typically you're going to have a box, with a line going through the middle of it. Could be the middle, depends on how the data is spread out. And then there's your box, and then you're going to have these little segments coming off that we call the whiskers. Okay, so some people out there are probably, really? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Maybe someone can help me out with this problem. Oh my God, I don't stop. Okay. Oh, I'll stop. Okay, I'll stop. Okay. All right, so does anybody remember how to create a box and whisker plot? Or what 5 values you get out of it? Okay, let me just start at the beginning. A box and whisker plot is a way of visually organizing your data into quartiles. Okay, it goes ahead and breaks them up into quartiles. So this right here, that would represent 25% of the data. That makes sense. Quartiles. So this right here, another 25%. This one here, 25. This one here, 25. So the box itself represents how much of the data. Okay. 50% of the data. There we go. So you're always going to have 5 items that are with the box and whisker plot. You're going to have the minimum value. You're going to have the maximum value. You're going to have the median. That's the middle value. We call that Q2. You're going to have the lower quartile Q1. And you're going to have the upper quartile Q3. Okay. And the first thing we got to remember is how do we create a box and whisker plot? And I'm looking at 204. Should we stop for today? Wow, that was no hesitation. Okay. So I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll go ahead and stop now. I'll go ahead and leave this up. You'll notice this set of data, what did I already do for you? I already put it in numerical order. Because if you're going to create a box and whisker plot, you need to start with the middlemost value. What do we call that? The median. Okay, so we'll go ahead and stop there. Let me go ahead and shut this down.